Okay, then let's start. So welcome again to our second module of our GoodWe Plus program. In this module, we will talk about the commissioning and installation of one of our inverters. This time, I also have the ET inverter with me. It's the old version of the ET inverter, but I will also go through a bit on how the new one looks and what the differences are. So the content of today is, first I will give a short presentation on what to do before you install inverters, how to prepare for it, show the DC connection and the AC, or the connections on both DC and the AC side, and then show which type of communication you can have with the inverter. And at the end of this chapter, I will shortly show, I have my camera here with me and the ET next to me, and I will show how it looks like on the bottom side and how we can connect it. After that, we will go into how to commission the inverter. This is using the app, and then also how to connect it to our online portal and how that would work. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can post them in the Q&A section, and maybe in the end of the webinar, you can also ask anything. But feel free to post anything during the webinar as well. With us, we also have Lindeve, who is hosting this webinar and taking care of everything on the back end, and also David, who's also here helping to answer your questions. So let's start with the preparation. So when you plan or want to install the inverter, there are some things that you need to have. So make sure you have them beforehand. What is very important is the installation manual. We also have a quick guide, and in there it goes through everything you need to know when you install it. And also in the installation manual, it's only in English and some other main languages. You find all information that you need. In addition to that, you also need a tool set with the proper tools. We also recommend to have some kind of multimeter, and it's also very good to have an AC clamp so you can measure the current. And please do not forget to have the personal protective equipment. And for commissioning, we also have a few different softwares to help you with that. It might look a bit complicated to have 3 different apps, but to make it clear, I will show you later on. But basically, we have 2 for commissioning and 1 for the monitoring. And for commissioning, we provide it depending if it's a grid tie inverter only, or if it has any storage features. Then you use the PV Master, but more of that later. Yeah, or no. So the commissioning, you have these 2 apps. The Solar Go is used for grid tie inverters only, and PV Master for all types of storage inverters. That means even the battery inverters, AC coupled, and hybrid inverters. And the SEMS is only for monitoring. Today we use the PV Master because we have the ET here with us. This is the 3-phase hybrid inverter. It's a 10 kilowatt inverter with backup and everything. So when you get the inverter, please open the package and check that it contains everything that you need to have. For our hybrid or storage inverter, everything should be included in the package. Also the installation manual, so please make sure to open it and check that the content is correct. And the content can vary a bit depending on which inverter model you have. So make sure to check the manuals and check the list inside it to make sure that you have all the mounting bracket, the correct screws, the terminals, and so on. And when you then decide to install the inverter, it's important, or we recommend that you keep it away from direct sunlight, keep it dry, and also clear of any snow. The inverters do have IP65 protection, but to increase the lifespan of the inverter and make sure that they work properly, it's usually best to follow these instructions. If it's in direct sunlight, it will likely overheat and it will shut down or not produce as much. And keeping it dry and clear of snow, this also prolongs the lifetime of the inverter. In the manual, you also find the instructions for mounting and how to install the inverter on the wall. It's very important that you follow these instructions because this also affects the operation of the inverter and the heat dissipation. Make sure to always install it in the right way, so not upside down or on the side or anything. If you want to tilt it, the maximum tilt allowance is specified in the manual. Usually for most inverters, it's 15 degrees backwards. Also, please observe the maximum or minimum clearing distances to the sides, underneath, and also to the top. This is also used for maintenance and to make sure that the air can flow properly around it. When you've found the correct space for the inverter, it's time to first mount the wall bracket. There's a little metal piece coming with it. So you just check the holes here, drill and plug it accordingly, and then fasten this mounting plate on the wall. Afterwards, you can just hang the inverter on top of it, and there's a little screw securing it on the side. You see here, the screws here. The AC connection, it's important that you have the proper cables and conductors. Please observe the size of the conductors and also how much wire length you need. This is all also included in the installation manual, so please refer to that. It depends a bit on which inverter you have, because it can differ a bit depending on the AC connection, but make sure that you always follow these recommendations. It's also important to have some kind of breaker on the AC side, and the breakers are usually 1.25 times the rated output current. So make sure that you have the correct breaker for the inverter. You also see it here in the manual. So now we assume that you have installed the inverter, the DC and the AC side is connected, and now you need to install the communication. Before that, we'll shortly look on the different inverters. Here you see mostly grid tie inverters, but mainly all inverters look quite similar. You have here on the front side, you have the quite flat plate, and then you have some kind of display or LED lights. For all storage inverters, you do not have any display. Instead, you have these LED indicators to show you if it's connected, if it's on, if it's connected to the server, importing power, exporting power, etc. So make sure to check these LED lights. On the left side of the inverter, you see a chart explaining what these LED lights means. So if you have any questions on is it connected, does it work now, etc., you can always check on the side of it to make sure that you can interpret the LED lights on the front. On the right-hand side of the inverter, you always have this kind of technical information. Here you can see the specific product and model number. You can see the serial number and the check code. The check code is very important. You do not find it anywhere else. It's not in the manual or such or on the website. So it's only on the side of the inverter. So to make sure that you have that, that's necessary if you want to connect the plans to our online portal. Then you need the serial number and the check code to make sure that it's really your inverter that you're connecting. And it's also good to maybe take a picture of the side of the inverter to, in case something happens in the future, you need some maintenance or something doesn't go so well, you need to contact our support. A picture of this will then include most important information, such as the model number and serial number, and you do not need them to go back to site. All connections to inverter are on the bottom side. In some specific cases, you also have some DC switches on the side of the inverter. However, for all storage inverters, it's always on the bottom side. So here you see the DC breaker, and then here you have the different PV connections. This is an ET inverter then, and here you see that you have 3 different PV connectors actually. So there are 2 different MPPTs. For whole Europe, there are actually only 1 string per MPPT. So one of these are then not included. So that means you have 2 strings and 2 MPPTs. After that, you see battery, that's underneath as well. And here you have the connection to the battery, the DC connection to the battery. The next here is a USB port with 4 screws. This is the connection for any kind of communication device, such as the Wi-Fi module, LAN module, Bluetooth, 4G, and so on. In older storage applications, there's no USB connection, and the communication dongle is screwed directly on the inverter. You can also use these older communication dongles, and the only thing you need to do then is to unscrew the split. And on the back side, you see that there's a 5-pin connector connected to the USB. Disconnect it, and you attach the module. This is also necessary for the ET inverter in case you want to use the LAN module. After that, this is the ET Plus, our newest updated ET inverter, and then it looks a bit different to the one I have with here. So here you have one sort of terminal here with all communication ports. So here you find the RS-45, the meter, not the meter, everything apart from the meter. All other communication goes through this one. And then instead on the right side, you have here 2 different cables coming out. One is for the smart meter, and the lower one is for the BMS to the battery. And these are, as you see here, already pre-wired. We'll also see it later on here. So the only thing you need to do is connect them, or if you want to reduce the cable length, you can also reduce the cable. And lastly, we have the AC output. And here you might notice that we have 2 different AC outputs. You have one here and one here. That means that one AC output is for the standard AC output going to the grid, and the other one is the backup output. The backup output I explained a bit in the first module, and in case the grid fails, this output here will turn off and not be active, but the backup output will still be active. It's important when you then install it in the house, you need to wire it properly so that you have 2 different 3-phase connections, and that you make sure which loads you have connected to which connection, so to say. And one of the most important thing before connecting the inverter is making sure that it's well grounded. On the side of the inverter here, you have the PE connection. Make sure that this is always connected and has the proper size. It also says in the manual what the recommended sizes are. Before you connect the DC side, make sure that the DC switch is turned off, and then you also make sure that you have the proper DC cables. In the package, you will also have the DC terminals, and then you just need to crimp them on and connect. As I explained before, here on the bottom side, here you see that these are blacked out, means that you only have 2 different DC inputs for any European models. And here is the battery connection. Same here, always observe the cable sizes. It all says in the manual which cable size and proper length and so on that you need. And then you just crimp it and connect it. Before connecting the AC side, then you need to check the values at the grid connection point. Here you can use the multimeter to check that it has the proper voltage values and so on. Always make sure that you install proper AC breakers. Here you have only a 2-pole, but according to the country standard, it's a 3-phase inverter. You will need to have a 3 or 4-pole AC breaker. On the AC side, you also, as I said before, you need to have the correct cable sizes and also connect both the AC to the grid as well as the backup. And what we also recommend in some cases when you go to a place, you want to install the ET, but you're not you do not maybe have a battery yet, so you cannot use the backup port, or you want to wait with the backup. Then we recommend that you connect everything and do the proper cabling. But then you can have a switch, 3-pole switch from the backup to the normal grid. And then in the future, when you then add the battery, then you can just switch on some of the loads to the backup output. Okay, so I think now we have maybe some questions, and then after that, I will show the live setup. So first question is, how do you commission the ET inverter? Here I showed you what you need to have. And where can you always get the complete manual? The manual, maybe I didn't mention this, but the manual is always available in the package or on our website. So before you go to contact us in any way for the manual, make sure to check the website because most documents that you need are usually there. The tilt angle we also went through, and what you need to do before connecting the DC cables, that's also quite obvious, I hope. And maybe I think some slides are actually missing. Let me end this poll now and we do it again. I will explain something firstly. It's the connection of the meter. So the meter is connected here. And when you connect the meter, you need to make sure that the meter comes in the package, and you have CTs and everything is pre-wired. I will also show this during the live installations. And then the current clamps, you need to clamp on the correct phase. It says on the current clamp which phase it should go to. It also has a specific direction. It's very important that you put the CT clamps facing towards the grid. There's a little arrow on the CT clamp, and that will show you in which direction the grid is. Make sure that you're always connected. Always also on the side of the smart meter, you can see the proper wiring and which CTs should go to which phase. In case you ever wonder or you lose the manual, it's also located on the side of the inverter. Also, the voltage sense is on the bottom side, and you also need to connect this on the same side as the CTs. Moreover, make sure that you always have the CTs connected as close as possible to the grid connection point, because that's where the CTs are, that's where the inverter will limit power. In case you want to have any power export limitation, they need to be just before the grid connection point, and also to measure the load consumption, they need to be after all the loads and just before the grid connection point. So make sure that you're always connected there. Okay, then we can start the questions again. All right, I think most of you have now answered. And if you have any, if you want to answer the questions later, or if you weren't able to answer it now, then we also have a Google form that you can fill out later on. So now I will shortly show the ET inverter. So here we have the ET inverter with us. Instead of any PV modules, we have a DC source here on the side. I will turn it off for now. And then here on the bottom side, you can also see the different connections. So without this, this is how it usually comes. So you have these covers here. This one is not connected, and the only thing that's different is this cable won't be here and the PV cable won't be here. So going from left to right, so here you see the DC switch off and on. Here you have the two different PV connections, one MPPT and the second MPPT. You have plus and minus. I'm not sure if you see it, but here on the bottom side, it's sort of printed on in the metal what it is. That here's one MPPT, you see PV1, PV2, and then here it even says battery connection. So here you also have the battery connection. Here is then the communication module that goes in here, usually a Wi-Fi communication, or you can also unscrew the screws here. There are 4 normally. I just took away 2 to make it a bit save some time. And then you can connect the LAN module here as well. This is the older version of the ET inverter. So then instead of having one port here with all the connections, we have the BMS here, the meter here, and here on the bottom side we have the RS485 for connection to, let's say, the SEC 1000S if you want to connect multiple ETs in parallel. And here we have then the AC connection. I can remove this so you see the connection. So here you have one here on the top, it says on grid, and here on the bottom side, you can below see it says backup. And then you see the different connections you need to connect. So going here first, let's say the first thing you should do is then maybe connect the PE cable. It's here connected on the side. Secondly, you connect the AC cable, and this one you just have the proper cable, size it properly, and then you connect it here. You see you have the different lines here, neutral and the earthing. Now, in this case, I didn't connect it properly because we don't even have an AC output. It's just to show you how it can be done. Beneath here, you have the second connection. Maybe you see it better here. Let me this one as a pointer. So below here, you have the different connections for the backup. So the line 1 for line 2 and 3 and so on. And you connect that. And when it's all connected, you fasten this one, which is the cover. And here you also see on the side where it says on grid and backup.
Theo, can you hear me?
So this one you then attach like this. And then fasten this bolt here so that it's water and dust proof. And then you see you even have the screws here, 4 screws around it to make sure that it's tightened. And here on the other side, you have the backup coming out. In case you don't connect the backup port directly and you want to leave it open, in case it's installed inside where there's no dust or water, you can leave it open. But to make sure that you have the IP65 cover, you need to cover up this this hole here. And usually in the package, you have some paste coming along. It's like goo, and that you can use to close these openings. Okay, so now we have the AC connected, the PE is connected, and now we will go ahead to the DC side. And on the DC side here, you just need to remove this, make sure that it's on off, and then after you have taken your proper DC cables and crimped the MC4 connectors on, make sure that you first measure the polarity. So you're connecting plus to plus and minus to minus, and then you just need to plug them in. And same thing, if you have a second MPPT, you do the same thing here. For this purpose, we only use a DC source, and you only need one string to power up the inverter. Secondly, we have here the Wi-Fi connection. The module comes in the package like this, and it's quite simple. You just need to connect it by pressing it in, like that. There's only one way it connects. You can see on the connection point here how to connect it. So make sure that you connect it correctly. Here you have the BMS cable, and as you see, it's already pre-wired. It looks then like this. And on the other side, you have one of these RJ45 contacts. So this one, either you cut the cable and do the proper connection, or if the battery has this kind of connection, you can just plug it straight in. For the meter, it's also pre-wired. And same thing here, you have the RJ45 connection here. And that's quite good, because now I will also show you how the meter is connected. So if we look here, we have the smart meter. This is how it looks like. It's quite a small meter. Everything is already configured on it. You don't need to do anything. Here on the top, you have the different connections to the CTs. They also comes pre-wired. So here you see I put them out. So you have CT A, B, and C. And here is the connection also with RS485. You see here plus and minus, and here it's actually pre-wired with this adapter. And this adapter fits perfectly to the meter, or the meter connection, this one that comes with the inverter. So you just plug it straight in there, and then it's connected to the inverter. Very easy. As I explained before, here you see the different CTs. So here you see that you have CTA, so goes to phase 1. And here it also says house to grid with an arrow. So the arrow needs to point towards the grid. So if the grid is here on the right side, it needs to clamp on like this. And how to clamp them on? These are specially made CTs that only fits this smart meter. And you just open it on the side, make sure that it fits the cable, and the AC cables goes in here, and then you just close it like this. So very simple. On the bottom side here, you have the voltage sense. And here, the important thing to know is that the order here is reversed. So please make sure that you check here on the bottom side. Here you even see neutral line 1, 2, and 3. And on the top, you only have numbers like this, but the CTs is also says on the CTs which one it is. If you have any questions, as I said here on the side of it, it also says how to connect it. There's a diagram explaining. So the CTs should then, after they're connected to the inverter via this. So actually I can connect it now just for purposes. You just connect it in here. Let's click. And then the CTs here are connected just before the grid connection point. And the voltage sense coming here on the bottom side needs also to be next to the CTs. So there should be no loads in between, because then it won't measure the power properly. Okay, and lastly, I just want to show you how it will look like when it's turned on. So now we have some voltage, the PV modules are on and the sun is shining, let's say, then we turn the DC switch on. And then it takes some time, but then you will see some blinking LEDs here on the front side. So as you see, there are no displays on any of our storage inverters. Instead, you have all of these blinking LEDs explaining, it even says here slightly on them. Now you see it blinks, means it's on. You see the battery here. And then the red one here will shine saying fault. And this is because we haven't connected the AC side. I will also show you can actually see the chart explaining the different LEDs. And there you have the explanation. Yes, and I think that's the main thing to show. I can also tell you that in case you want to connect multiple of these in parallel, then you not connect the smart meter. So instead of the smart meter, you need to have a master unit called SEC1000S. And to connect it, when you buy it, you get some cables in the package. And to connect it, you need to unscrew this here. I can do it just to show you. When you unscrew it, you have the connection here. And if you reach in, you see that it's also an RJ45 contact. And inside here, you have two different ports. I'm not sure if it's possible to see in the slide. Yeah, maybe you see it now here. So you see that there are two different ports in there. The upper one is for the smart meter. And in case you want to use the SEC1000S, you use the lower one. And then you get the cable, which looks like this. Sorry, my screen went black. So it looks like this. You have the port, everything is pre-wired. It's already connected here, and it says EMS. And then you just connect this RJ45 contact here below. Screw this tightly. And now you have a splitter like this. And when you open these, you can see that also here, you have the RJ45 connection. And then you can daisy chain several inverters. And then one of them goes then to the SEC1000S, which we have here. Look like this. And then here on the bottom side, you have also you need to connect it to one of these. So not the RJ45 contacts here. And this is the internet, and then you need to use one of the pins here. But it also says in the manual of the SEC1000S. And in most cases, you do not use multiple ET inverters on the same installation. But yes, let's turn it off for now. And I will show you now how to commission the inverter. And this is done via our app. Here, I see that the slide stopped now. Here is how you connect the smart meter. As you see here, this is how it should be connected. So the PTs are connected just before the meters, and the voltage stands as close to them as possible with all the load on the other side. So no load in between here. Yes. And this is how you connect it. This is also what I showed you. Here on the left side, you have the inverter, and the rest goes to the voltage here. Here you see that the sense for the phases here are reversed for the current sensors as well as the voltage. But also says on the inverter. Here you see the one I had, the older version of the ET, how it's connected. And here's the newer version. Then you instead have this big connection here in case you want to use a SEC1000S. And this is what I showed you with the white connection that goes in here. And then you have this spare cable that I showed, and you have a splitter that goes, and you can connect up to 4 inverters in daisy chain. And then you get this thing with the SEC1000S, and then you just connect it to one of the comms. Okay, so now let's look at the commissioning of the inverter. So to commission an inverter, there are no screens on them. So what you need is to have the app. It's also necessary to have some kind of connection between your phone and the inverter. Usually this is done over Wi-Fi, but it's also possible to do it over Bluetooth. Nowadays, we try to include the Bluetooth module as well inside the package, because then you can also use the Bluetooth module to install the latest firmware update on the inverter. So before you commission the inverter, we actually suggest that you connect the Bluetooth, go into the inverter and update to the latest software. Yes. So when you connect, you need to, let's say you use the Wi-Fi module, you have the Wi-Fi module connected to the inverter, then you go into your phone or device and search for the Wi-Fi. It's usually called solar Wi-Fi with and the last digits of the serial number of the inverter. So if you're commissioning several inverters, you can distinguish which one you want to connect to by the end numbers in the Wi-Fi. So there you have it corresponds to the serial number. To log into the solar Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi of the inverter, the default password is 1 to 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then when you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you open up the PV Master app, and then when you scroll down, it should pop up a solar Wi-Fi, blah, blah, blah. And then you click on this to connect to the inverter's interface. When you're inside the inverter on its interface here, you can first have an overview here. And here you see the live version of the voltage, the battery, the load, etc. So here you can really check if the installation has been done properly. But before checking this too much, make sure that you need to set up and commission the inverter. But then you can go back here and check this. On the bottom side here, you have 3 different menus. You have overview, parameters, and settings. In the overview, this is the first page you end up on, and here you can see the live data and the current settings that you have chosen. In this example here, you see that the country code is Italy, and then you see the rest of the settings. Under parameters, you can check more details, what settings you have chosen, and you can also see the alarms and the history of the inverters. If anything happened, like there's a communication fault or grid fault or something, then it will all be saved here. On the right side, you have the settings, and this is where you set up the inverter, you do the commissioning, you set up the battery, and in case you want to change anything for the smart meter, which is the one it's a bit blurred my screen, but the one we had here, then you also do it through the settings here. If you click on settings, the commissioning of the hybrid inverters are actually, in my opinion, easier than the commissioning of the on-grid inverter, because PV Master will guide you through the whole setup. For the inverter to work, you only need to click here on basic settings, and then it will guide you through everything you need to select in order for the inverter to be connected. So firstly, you need to select the country code or the safety code. This will configure the grid parameters of the inverter. Make sure here you have Africa, Europe, and so on. Make sure to try to find your country here. In case you do not find it, there are also some default settings under others. And here you have the default 50 and 60 hertz, for example. And then you can always, afterhand, you can always configure the specific grid settings manually. So in this case, I'm located in Germany, so I would then click on Germany, and then after that, I need to select the work mode. Here we have a few different work mode. Usually it's only these 3 that we need to consider: the general mode, the backup mode, and economical mode. In maybe 90% of the cases, general mode will be the best one. This will optimize the self-use of the facility to optimize the PV generation and the battery generation. You do not need to do anything additionally. The backup mode here is in case you have very frequent backups or grid faults and you need to have the backup set up in a specific way. But even in general mode, you will have the backup. For eco mode, this is a time of use type of mode, and here you can set up specific times when you want to charge or discharge the battery. So if you want to charge it in the morning and discharge it in the evening, you can set up specific time slots here, and any time you don't configure will automatically be run in general mode. And lastly, after you selected this, you need to select which battery you have connected. If you decide to connect the battery at a later stage, then you can just select no battery and continue. And for the ET inverter, it's quite nice because it will communicate directly with one BMS. So you only need, or with our battery then. So you only need to select the battery, and then it will know how many batteries are connected to that BMS. And that's actually everything you need to do for the inverter to be connected and work. Settings that you can do. I will quickly show you what's possible, but this is not really necessary in any way. Only if you have specific requirements, this can be of use. Under advanced settings, you can here change the grid parameters manually. In case you have a very specific grid parameters you need, then you set up the basic ones, and then afterwards you can change the grid parameters to suit you. In case you want to use the backup output, you need to activate it here as well. So you have the backup supply here, you just activate this one. This one here, this function is called shadow scan, and this is to, in case on your PV modules you have frequent shadows, usually not from clouds, but from if you have a chimney or some kind of big trees in the near that will cover the modules frequently, then you can have this one activated for the MPPT to scan much more frequent. And here it will scan as a default once every hour. In case you do not have any shadows on your PV systems, we recommend that you do not activate this, because when it scans, it takes some time, and during that time, the inverter do not generate any output. So to optimize the yield, if you do not have shadows on your PV plants, then leave this out. Only if you have shadows, it will be beneficial for your generation. The COM address here is only in case you want to connect multiple inverters in parallel to the SUC 1000, then you need to assign them to a specific COM address, and that you do here. Every inverter needs to have a unique address. In case you do not follow the recommendations of what you connect to the backup side and it's overloaded, then the inverter will shut down for a few moments and then try again. And after it's tried a couple of times, it will not try anymore, and it will be in constant failure mode, so to say. And for it to then reset, you need to hear the overloading fault, and that you do here. So you need to do that manually in case you do not follow the recommendation for the backup supply. And here on battery settings, it's also possible to change the specific battery configurations. In most cases, especially if using a three-phase inverter, this will be done automatically because it will communicate with the BMS of the battery and get all the necessary settings. In some cases, here on the battery settings, you can also choose the specific DoD settings for the backup and on-grid connection. You can have different, how much you want the battery to discharge or how much capacity you want to save for specific situations. Under update Wi-Fi password, you can update and change the password of the inverter, and it's highly recommended to do it. Otherwise, anyone can actually connect to your inverter, and it's not very secure. To log into this page, you only type admin, and then you're in and can change the Wi-Fi of the inverter. Also, something I forgot to mention, when you go into advanced settings, this is very important, it might ask you for a password. If it asks you for a password to access the PV Master app, the password is GoodWe 2010. It's very important to remember. This also, everything of this also is stated in the setup guide for the PV Master. During the meter test here, you can run a test and to have an automatic check if you connected the CTs and so on correctly. And lastly, I also want to show you quickly how you can upgrade. Sorry, how you can upgrade the firmware of the inverter to the latest version. And this is done with the Bluetooth module. It looks like this. So it's like a USB stick, looks like a USB drive. So it's something, when it's included in the package, you can do it and then you connect it. You do not need to pair your phone with the inverter. Instead, you press here in the PV Master app, when you, instead of connecting to the Wi-Fi, you press on the bottom to connect device and inverter with Bluetooth. And this will then take you to the exactly same setup screen as with the Wi-Fi. You click here on the inverter and then you come to this main screen. If on the main screen you have a yellow banner here, it means that you do not have the latest firmware for the inverter. If you do not see anything there, you already have the latest firmware and everything is fine. But if you have the yellow banner here, you can click on it and this will then show you the current version and so on. And with this, you can then upgrade to the latest firmware. Basically, you will download the latest firmware to your phone and then it will be transferred over Bluetooth. So when you then press here on upgrade, it will ask you a short upgrade, press confirm, and then it will start loading like this. When it loads like this, it only means that the firmware is uploaded to the inverter. Then the inverter needs to apply the firmware. And here it says upgrade successfully, then you press confirm, and then you need to wait 5 to 10 minutes until the firmware has been applied successfully. So likely the screen will freeze, and sometimes you might think, okay, it's not really working, but please wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then you will see that the inverter physically reboots. You will see some flashing lights, and that will show you that the reboot and upgrade has been done successfully. And then you will also be able to use the PV Master screen as well and navigate that. Okay, so now I will show you, or first we'll have some polls and some questions, and then I will show you how to commission the inverter that we have here. So first question is, which app is used to commission the storage inverters? That we have been looking at quite a lot. The password to connect to the inverter hotspot, so the inverter's Wi-Fi. We also saw that. And then to access the default settings of the inverter, for example, if you press on advanced, it might ask you for a separate password. And this to make sure that not the end users are, are changing the settings of the inverter. So let me now stop my video. David and Linve, can I just ask you if you see the screen of my phone properly? Huh?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Great. To answer a question that came here, if a new firmware version is rolled out later on after you install the firmware and the inverter, usually it means, usually the inverter is still working fine and you don't need to do anything. The new firmwares that are rolled out are usually to correct any bugs or maybe to add some new function. And in case you would then need to use a new function that is then only available with the new firmware, then you can contact our support and they can update the software remotely. This, however, assumes that the inverter is connected to our SEMS portal. This can also be done if you are doing or something is wrong with inverter, you don't know what to do, then we might need to just update the firmware and it will then work good again. So just contact our support to update it and it should work. Okay, I think the questions were not too many, so let's end the poll now and look on the commissioning. And if you don't have time to answer all the questions, then you can always do it at a later stage with a Google form. Okay, so let's say now I want to connect to the inverter. I just now need to connect the Wi-Fi here, dongle, and then make sure that the inverter is powered on. And on my phone, I will then need to go to settings. Let me. Do you see the little hand now going around? So you see where I'm pointing. I hope that's a bit easier. So now it's all connected. So what you do now is you click here on Wi-Fi to connect to the Wi-Fi. We'll give you the whole list of all possible Wi-Fi. You see already from before I'm connected. If not, you press here and the password is, as said previously, 128. After that, you go out of this, you open here the PV Master app. Will take you to this main screen. If you scroll down, it will try to search for the devices. And now we see here that the solar Wi-Fi pops up. And here you see the digits here are the last digits of the serial number. So pressing on this will now come to the main screen of the inverter. So here we see working status waiting mode. This is, we have a fault here because we do not have any grid connection currently. But to set it up, here you see how it looks like. I can click here on parameters to show you how this looks. Here you see the whole system data. You see the PV input is currently, you have 253.9 volts. This is from the DC source that we're using. Otherwise, you would then here see from the other MPPT, and here you also see the current. Currently, we do not have 0.04 amps. So it's too little to register here. But here you can see all the data. You see the status of the battery, and here you also see some inverter information. Clicking on alarm here, we can likely see why we have a fault on our inverter. So here you see the history, and here you can also see we had earlier a communication failure with maybe I didn't connect the Wi-Fi module tight enough. Or no, here it says PMS alarm, so the battery is not connected. Yeah, that makes sense. Here you see another error, and it's a frequency AC failure, volt AC failure, utility loss. Utility loss usually means that the AC side is not connected. That also makes sense because we are not connected there. Sorry. And now to set it up, we press on settings. Then here we have the list here, and now we just go to basic settings to set it up. Now it will ask us for the password. We click in here and we type in, let me change this to English. Good, with small characters, GoodWe 2010. And clicking here on this screen will remove the keyboard. Logging in, we get to the screen here, and now we can see the different things we have. So now I want to go to Europe. I'm in Germany, so I will then select Germany here. And here you have different ones for hybrid inverter and AC coupled inverter. ET is a hybrid inverter and not a AC coupled battery inverter. So we select here. So it's now set. Click on next. Want to select the working mode. I just want to show you here the eco mode. When you press here, you can then set the specific times and how much you want to charge the battery or not, and etc. And you can do this for several different time steps. Let's go back, and instead we want to choose, yeah, here you see the eco mode, and here if you press on plus, you can set additional time zones. But we want to have general mode now. Short description, what happens, and then we click on set. It's all set, we click on next. And then we now need to select the specific battery. In this case, we do not have any battery, so we then select no battery. And then sometimes it even says unsuccessfully, but that's also okay because we don't have any battery. Battery communication failed. Yes, we do not have one, so we don't care. We then go to the meter test, and here we can go do a meter test to check if we connected the CTs correctly. However, now I haven't connected. Wait 1 second. I think my speakers died. Do you still hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yes. Okay, great. Then all is good. Then, so I haven't connected the meter now to this, where it's connected to the inverter, but the CTs are not connected, so the meter test will anyways not work. We skip this now, we press on exit, and then we have gone through all the setups. So now the device needs to restart. We press on yes, and it will take a few minutes. You can also then usually see on the inverter that it blinks, and then you will come back here to the main screen. So now the inverter should actually be up and running if we had connected it to the AC power. We can now go to parameters here to check, or yes, data here to see the connection here. We can go to overview here, and we see the safety code is the German one for hybrid inverters and so on. If we go to settings and we click on advanced settings, we can here see how it looks like. Let's see if it again asks for the password. Here we can then change the grid parameter settings, and here you customize the safety parameters. Do not change this if you do not know what you're looking for. And here on top, you also have some additional settings. So going back here, you need to check this in case you want to have some power limit on the, let's say we want to use all energy for ourselves and we're not allowed to export anything to the grid. Here you then set the threshold. So how much you want to be exported to the grid. In most cases, you don't want to export anything, but sometimes it might be that the grid provider says, okay, maximum 3 kilowatt. And then you add that as max, you press okay, and then it will be set. In some countries, it's good to have unbalanced output. Then you can activate it here. Let's cancel it for now. And here you can change the power factor. That's usually not necessary. Going back here, you see in advanced settings that here you have the backup supply. Here, the detection mode is maybe not very important. Cold start is also for very specific cases. Here you have the shadow scan again that I told you about previously, the COM address, and clearing the overloading fault. Interesting might be the battery settings here. We currently do not have a battery connected, but you can anyway see the standard battery settings or from the previous battery that was connected. Here you can set the state of charge protection. So here you can set some different depths of discharge for different purposes. So you can have, when it's connected to grid, the battery can use 50% of the capacity, and when it's maybe for backup, then you have 50% over, and then it can discharge down to 90%. So you can use 90% of the total charge. So here you can change this depending on what you require. When you're done, you always click on save, and then you can return. Yes, and when you're done, it always needs to restart to apply the settings. Here you also can update the Wi-Fi password. As I showed before, you enter the new password and that you want to have. And yeah, and here version info, you can see some, if you go here to parameters, as I said here, you see the firmware version of the inverter in case you need to know this. And that's the commissioning of the inverter. Let's now continue to look how you can set it up in SEMS and how our SEMS platform works. I will share now my presentation again. So the commissioning of the ET, now we have done that, and now the SEMS intro. So our SEMS portal is our monitoring platform. When you connect the Wi-Fi and the Wi-Fi is connected to the internet, then you it's actually, or it automatically connects to our server and our SEMS portal. And then you can create an account. I will show you this later on, and how you create a new plant and add the inverter to that plant. When you then log in as an installer, you can see an overview here of all your installed plants. You can see which one are working, which one are offline, and which one has some kind of error or fault. It can also be done then to troubleshoot. There is also, if you are more curious, there's also a demo version both for the app and for the web version. And then you can just go there and you will find the demo version, so you can look how it looks like. When you want to access your plant, just click on here. I also went through this in the last presentation. And here you have an overview of the plant. Here on the bottom side, you see the specific inverter. And all other devices that you have added to this plant. And here, if you click here, you can also get some advanced graphs and check very specific settings or specific things of the inverter, such as the voltage per string, current, etc. To add it add a installation to your SEMS account is very, very easy. I think the most easiest way is to use the app. Usually you can do it when you commission the inverter, right after or even right before. Because usually you need to have the phone with you anyways for the commissioning, and then you can just have the SEMS app and do it simultaneously. So here you just log in with your installer account, and then after you're logged in, you see the main screen here. You click on the, oh, maybe you don't see my laser pointer. If you click here on the plus in the top left corner, you will add a new plant. This will take you to this screen here, and then you just fill in the fields here. This here is the owner's email. So if you install it for an end user, please enter their email account here. That will automatically create a end user SEMS account for that person. They will get all the login details sent to their email. and they have a default password, and then after that they can change it. The default password is GoodWe 2018, but of course they should change it. Here you need to enter a name for your specific plant or installation. You can here select address, use the map function. Then you need to choose the classifications, usually if it's residential or storage, they're two different there, or if it's CNI or utility. Here you enter the capacity of the total PV capacity you have installed, and not necessary, but you can also add how many modules you have. The profit ratio here is just scalar that's multiplied with the total production. So here it's more to track roughly how much you have energy you have produced, but translated to some currency. You can also press here to change the currency conversion that will be displayed. And it's also possible to add some photos. When you click on submit, it will even give you some information explaining this of the password that end user becomes. And then you click here on submit. And now it will take you back or take you to the plant screen, homepage. And often it also asks you if you have nothing added there. It will ask you, the plant was created. Do you want to add a device directly? You can either click here or do it at a later stage, and then you click here. When you add the plant, you will get to see this type of screen, and then you need to input the serial number and the check code and give it a name. Serial number can be quite long, and sometimes it's annoying to do it. So instead, you can just scan the QR code that's on the right side of the inverter, the same place where you find the serial number and check code. Scan the QR code, and then everything is entered automatically, and you just need to enter a name and press add inverter. When that's done, you can see the newly added inverter here. You see the total production. You see here an overview of the latest measured power, and so on. So let's have our last question round, and then I will show you how to add it directly on the phone. And after that, we can also, if you have any other questions, then you are free to ask them. So round 3 is how can you connect? The first question is how can you connect the plant to our portal? You can, there are different versions. Of course, everything is possible. The app is, however, the easiest one, I would say. The initial password, we mentioned that, and the check code, I actually talked about this in the beginning, but it's maybe not too hard to figure out. The check code is used to make sure that the inverter really is the one you want to install, like a double security check for the serial number. It'll give you maybe 1 or 2 minutes to answer this, and then I will show you how to do it on the phone. Okay, so let's end this, and I will show you how to set it up. So assuming now we have commissioned the plant, it's all set, and now we want to add it, we're still on site, and we want to add it to SEMS and make sure that the end user gets an account so that they also can check their production. So then we open here the SEMS portal. Now I see I already had it open from previous. So here I'm now logged in with my installer account then, and you see here all my many working plants. To add a new plant, we click here on the top corner. And now we need to enter the owner's email address. So we just type something in here. Make sure that it's correct. In this case, I mean, it doesn't matter because we won't do anything. It will be deleted anyways, but make sure that you add the correct one here. Here for the plant name, we can call it GoodWe test plant 1. For the address, then we click here, and that will take us to a map, and then we can either type the address here or we can try to find it. Now, this is where our office is, so I will just click submit, and then it will ask you if the local time is correct. If it's correct, you click ignore. Otherwise, you can relocate to change the specific location. Clicking ignore, then the address is all added here. Now we need to choose the classification. Here you see the different one. We have a battery storage because it's an ET inverter. And then the capacity of the plant, yeah, we only have the DC source now, so it's not really giving much, but let's say it's 12 kilowatts installed. Make sure that you see the units here. Sometimes it's watt and sometimes kilowatt. So you don't type 12,000, for example. Here is the battery capacity. Let's say we have a 10 kilowatt hours of battery. And then how many modules? It's not necessary, but for the reason, let's just type in a number. Profit ratio here, let's say 1, but instead of USD per kilowatt, we want to change this to something else. Here is euro, for example. And we select that. Want to have a nice photo of our cool installation. This should maybe not be of the inverter, but of the house or the TV modules. Now we only have the DC source, so let's use that. Use photo, then it's added here, and then we click on submit. And this will now give you this, take this screen. And it now creates also an end user account for the address that we have created in invalid email address format, okay? It's my fault. Let's add a at gmail.com, for example. Click on submit, and I think it should now work. Yes, and now it says a new account has been created and the new password is GoodWe 2018. And one question here was that, yes, in the question, in the post, this was misspelled with a large W, but it's GoodWe 2018 with only a large G. So submit. And now we will have our plant created. So here is our new plant and it's added successfully. Let's add a inverter. We press on add and this will open up the camera now. And here we have the inverter. And then here on the side, you see we have the serial number and the check code. And please just here, hold it over the QR code and it will, as you see, just import it directly. Now you can just control it that it really is imported correctly. Sometimes if you have some dirt on top of it, it doesn't work properly. But usually it's fine. Then we call it office inverter, for example. Office one better. Okay, let's call it that. Let's go with autocorrect. And then we just add it. And that's it. Yeah, it's now this has already been added, I think, from another GoodWe Plus session, but in case not, this will be added to your plant and everything. Then you will see your devices here, your inverters, and the whole setup. With the phone, actually, you just press here on the plus, create the plant, then add the inverter by scanning, and then takes you maybe maximum 2 minutes. And then you have created the end user account, added the inverter, and to your own account as well, and everything is then connected. Okay, so that is actually it. If you have any questions, feel free to post it or raise your hand and let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, you're always we're happy if you email us and ask us whatever. And yes, and after the webinar, you will also have some kind of evaluation form. We appreciate when you fill that in, because that helps us improve these webinars and how to do it even better for you. Okay, then if we have no questions, we'll wait maybe a few seconds, and if not, then I wish you a nice day. All right, we have maybe some questions. If you have any questions about the webinar itself, then Lindeve will help you answer that. And also answer you by email. No worries, we will find your email address. SEMS is a channel portal, but for basic configuration on both hybrid and so SEMS is used to monitor the plants. There are also some settings that you can do as an installer in the SEMS. So you have some limited changes that you can do remotely, but mostly it's done for monitoring. If you want to do any configurations, such as the power limits, changing that, or change the grid settings, then you need to do that on the PD Master. So always the commissioning needs to be done on site on the PD Master app, and it's not done remotely. But if you after the commissioning want to change some stuff, then there are some limited possibilities to do that also over SEMS. Okay. Then I thank you all for joining this webinar, and we will have the third webinar on Thursday at same time, also 10 o'clock, and then David will go through the troubleshooting and how you would do if something goes wrong, or what to do if something goes wrong.